Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We have some discussion to be had around rejection-based identity because do you have a rejection-based identity? And if you don't know the answer to that, then you might want to hang around, okay? Because what I'm going to present here is, to the best of my knowledge, a Michelina original working theory. And I know that because I've lived this out, the rejection-based identity. For the first 35 years of my life, I had a rejection-based identity. And I don't know that the academic literature, the psychology, or the like sociology has really caught up to this. I feel like a lot of people don't have a good handle on what identity is. And so we do have a lot of discussion around rejection, but there are very few, to my best of my understanding, knowledge, and research thus far, that are claiming here what I am, which is that you can, and I have had a rejection-based identity, right? And so, what at best people are saying right now is you can have a rejection-informed identity, right? You can have a rejection of an identity that's informed by rejection. Rejection wound, rejection mindset, rejection sensitivity, dysmorphia, which I will talk about. But I am making the claim here and in my book that I am writing and in the academic literature that I will be publishing that you can, and many and most do, have a rejection-based identity. And I know that because I have lived it. I have helped people heal from it. The Lord and I have helped me heal from it. And so a lot of the work I do in my sort of analysis practice and coaching practice is on rejection-based identity. At the core, at the root, the false identity that I'm most often working with is a rejection-based identity. And it's because I had one. If you know anything about me, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Dr. Michelina. I am a minister. You might know me from Seasons and Signs ministry, but I am also a PhD in leadership I wrote a dissertation on authentic leadership, and I have been doing authentic identity work with my clients as a practice for the last 6 years. I think that you do have a true God-given identity that is a blueprint. I know the psychology talks about nature versus nurture, and I think there's merit to it, of course, because your surroundings do inform how you show up in the world. But I have seen now too much that people have core, fixed, stable identities that the Lord implanted in them at their birth. And I see this because I know at about 6 months old, children, people start to showcase specific things that are unique to them. Oh, unique in that it belongs to them, and not unique in the fact that other people have those same kind of traits and states, right? So this identity work is something that I think that people will be looking at more in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And it is at the core of everything. The way you see yourself, the way you show up in the world, your identity, your core identity, can have a lot of moving parts to it, but also a lot of fixed things to it. And that's a different study for a different day. And that's part of what I'm writing a book on. So stay tuned, okay? Because if you like this kind of stuff, you will really enjoy what we do here. If you are coming to me from my coaching practice, you might be familiar with my slogan. Authentic identity coaching helps everyone live empowered, right? That's my last name turned into a brand. And so I do believe everybody needs identity coaching. I believe all people need some version of authentic identity coaching because it does help everyone live empowered. And there are very few identity coaches out there. There are very few authentic identity coaches out there. And I do tend to take it as an analytical practice. Self and story analysis is my training, my background. Outside of my PhD in leadership, I also hold masters in education, literature, and theology, and am working on one in business and ministry. And I am very good at reading things that are beneath and below the surface. That's part of the skill of research and analysis. And so I do tend to take high level things and make them practical and concrete. I do tend to take concepts and make them easily understandable. I do have a teaching background, so I do teach. But this is all just me, part of me, right? But all of that to say, that's all the kind of credentialing from the academic and such. I have lived this out. I have lived this out for 35 years. I had a rejection-based identity, and I wasn't even aware of it until about 10 years ago. And the track that was always in my head was, what's wrong with me? Why doesn't anybody like me? Why hasn't anyone chosen me? Why doesn't anyone want me? I didn't know then what I have since researched and figured out now is that that's a rejection informed identity. I had a rejection based identity, which I will talk about here, because everything was going to that. I am a scarlet letter mentality, right? And so my whole life, I functioned out of I'm a black sheep, I'm a scarlet letter, right? That's rejection-based identity language. I am this thing, right? It's not rejection informed in that it's like I don't feel like anybody wants me. So what does that mean about me? It means I'm not wantable. Rejection-based identity, right? So let's talk about it because there is definitely discussion and language around it. But what I am attempting to present here is, I believe, somewhat seminal on the cutting edge of this research. So I hope that you enjoy this as much as I do. And so my thesis here and observations, because like I said, to the best of my knowledge, not a lot of people are claiming what I'm claiming here. Because many people do argue that rejection's a mindset, or it's a perspective, or it's a lens, right? They will say that it's like one part of, and it does filter out. If you have a mindset that is based in rejection, you're going to naturally focus on the rejection, right? The same way that if you have like a fixed mindset, if you know the work of Carol Dweck, she does growth mindset and fixed mindset. Rejection would be part of the fixed mindset, right? It closes down the narrative. I already know what I need to know. I don't need to find out more. It's not open. It's not curious. It's not asking questions, things of that nature. But, and again, growth and fixed mindsets are conversations for another day. I may have a topical on here somewhere. I might not. It's pretty well-known research now. Carol Dweck is the seminal author of that. But many people argue that rejection is kind of like a filter or a response, right? I think Paris Hilton just had a conversation about, or is becoming a figurehead for rejection sensitive dysphoria, right? Or disorder. And we'll talk about these things in this presentation, but that's kind of a response, right? So people are either saying like mindset is a way you look at the world. It's a mindset or a perspective, and or it's a way you interpret the world. It's an emotional response. My own research analysis and awareness says that it's more than that for a lot of people who have a rejection-based identity, myself being one of them. And what I have found is that it is the internalization of the mindset and the emotions, and it becomes a core belief about the person and who they are, right? Now, there is something which we'll talk about called core wounds, certain wounds that you have in the core of your identity. And that hits the closest to what I'm arguing here because there are core wounds. But what I'm seeing is that core wound doesn't talk deeply enough about what this is. Because when we look at a person, there's a lot of things that go into what makes up a person. Okay. And going just off of the old standard, which is for me the Bible, right? The Bible is one of the oldest standards we've got. It's an old text. we see in 1 Thessalonians 5:23 that we are a spirit, we have a soul, we live in a body. So already we're a three-part being, right? We are a spirit self, which most people don't know what that means. We have a soul, which most people don't know what that means, and we have a physical person, which is what most people focus on. Our spiritual self is an energetic body, right? Our soul self is our mind, our will, and our emotions. And our physical self is obviously our physical flesh, but also has to do with like our fascial system, has to do with our tissues, has to do with the cells in our body. And all three of these things can hold on to false identity things. So, what happens with rejection is that you can feel it in your body, you can feel it in your brain, you can feel it in your heart, you can feel it in your mind, you can feel it in your energetic system. When all three of those things have internalized rejection, you get a rejection-based identity, right? And so it's like which we'll talk about on one of the next slides. When the rejection permeates mind, body, and soul, we've got a rejection-based identity. Now, most people aren't looking at identity in that multifaceted type of a way. And that is because they are not identity analysts. But your girl is, okay? Self and story analyst for a reason. Because I realized as I've been working through my own self over the last decade and some odd change, it is true that thoughts create feelings, feelings create beliefs, beliefs create action. But what creates your thoughts is your identity, right? And so we have to go deeper. And most people are not going deep. They're not plowing in deep to the core of the heart of the issue. But I think rejection-based identity is one of the prevalent identities and epidemic that we see in this society today. And it causes low self-worth, low self-value, low self-esteem, insecurity, causes poor self-image, causes a lot of things. And so this again, this is my thesis and observations. I don't think anybody else is making this claim anywhere that I can see, that I have found, that I have researched. They're hitting the surface. We're seeing it though. We're seeing it. People are talking about it. So it's good. The research has become more prevalent over the last 25 to 30 years. But what I am sort of putting to you here is a bit of a dissertation, quite frankly, because there's not a lot of great research on identity and what that is. There's a lot of personality. There's a lot of character. There's a lot of mind, body. There's not a lot of literature, and there's not a lot of practitioners, and there's not a lot of academics who are looking at it to the extent and depth that this presentation is going to. Okay. So there's really not a lot of great research, I feel, from what I've seen on what identity is. And when people talk about identity, they very much want to leave the Lord out of it. And you cannot, unfortunately. You cannot, because you were created by a creator. You were created in his image. And so the minute we try to have an identity conversation that is not centered and focused on the Lord is the minute that we are talking about a fraction of what we need to look at. Right? And so already, if there's somebody who is not including the Lord in an identity discussion, they are missing the mark completely. It's like trying to talk about a fish and not including the ocean or the body of water that it lives in. It's not possible, right? And so this I want you to understand how where I fall into this discussion, which is a little bit in a category that doesn't exist yet from what I can see. But I do want to talk about what does exist, and I want to talk to you about just rejection in general, because you probably have it, quite frankly. If you don't have a rejection-based identity, my assumption is you have at least a false identity. Most people have false identities. They don't know who they are, right? If you don't know God, I already know you don't know who you are because you are missing half the story, right? But even many Christians don't know who they are. And then they get mad at God and they get mad at Christianity and they get mad at religion and they get mad at faith and they get mad at the world because they're looking for themselves in all the wrong places, right? There are many, 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 many false identities and false identifiers that people use to try to find meaning and purpose in themselves and their realities. Now, I have talked about this on other lecture series, so you can go check those out. Authentic identity, right? If you can have a true identity, an authentic identity, and you can, and you do, you can very much have a false one. And most people are functioning out of that. Now, again, we can talk to, not here, on the difference between a false identity and a forming identity, right? Forming identity is a different thing because we live in a process of development. And so when you're in your kind of acorn self, and again, I've got this on a different discussion elsewhere, when you're in your acorn self, you are still in formation to the oak. It's not a false identity. It's not the truest form of yourself, right? And so we do have what I can call forming identity and what, researchers and practitioners have said and talked about. So, that's a different thing. A false identity is just the false perception of themselves. It is, I call them satanic strongholds primarily, right? They're lies believed, they are mindsets unrenewed, they are hearts unhealed, and they are habits unchecked. Everywhere that a person can grow is a place a person can be misguided, deceived, and believe a lie, quite frankly. So most people are looking to the world to try to figure out who they are. And the only answer for who you are is inside of you. And very few people have the ability to reason, experience, or analyze that. One of my sort of God-given gifts, one of my anointings, is the ability to, for lack of a better term, right, identity analyze. I have a good perception usually of what's true and what's false in a person. And so authentic identity analysis is one of the connection calls that I offer because it's like one of my favorite things to do is like, well, who are you? And I can start to tell what you know about yourself from how we have that discussion. And so if you are interested in this work and you want to know more about who you are, please schedule an authentic identity analysis. We will talk about that at the end of the presentation. But most people are functioning out of performance-based identity, false identity. My worth is in my work identity, right? And again, I have discussions on this, the core identity model, the authentic identity, how to know if you're an authentic identity. So go ahead and check out those as well, the body of that work on my YouTube. But false identity is performance-based, and it very often comes from the need, the approval, the validation of other people. Because false identity is lacking true connection, it looks for shallow approval or shallow attachment. False identity will have people telling people what they want to hear and acting in ways that keep people happy and will remove a person further from themselves. And as someone who has been in places like that, specifically around men, it is a way that you are small. When you say yes and you want to say no, when you go somewhere you don't want to be, like there's just there's so much around it. And it is a tricky thing, right? Because we exist as our own entity and also in a collective network. It's very hard for us to be the interdependent being that we're called to be, right? Going back to my tree metaphor, an acorn is one acorn on a big old tree. It falls, gets in the ground, dies to itself, and becomes the tree that it's supposed to be. The first thing is it puts down the root network. Well, that root network links up to the other tree, right, to help it grow. And so on one hand, you are your own entity. And on the other hand, there's a vast collective that you are very much a part of. There's a reason we call it a family tree. There's a reason we call it a lineage, right? There's an age of the line, lineage, age of the line, right? And so you are a collective culmination of all the other things and people around you. And you are also uniquely yourself. So I'm not going to pretend to say that like identity is an easy discussion. It's not. It's why most people can't have it with the fullness and the depth of skill that one is called to have it with, right? And it is why authentic identity coaching helps everyone live empowered. I think everybody needs authentic identity coaching, you know? And so rejection-based identity, especially if you have this, you need authentic identity coaching yesterday. I know this because authentic identity coaching is what helped me to heal from my rejection-based identity, and it is what helps many of my clients to heal from their rejection-based identity. Literally, just have a client that completed the authentic identity mentorship that I offer, and today she voice noted me, and she was like, I went up to this person. I asked them if I could do this thing. They said no. And I was okay with it. I was fine with it. Whereas before, it would have spiraled me into a dovetail of shame and all these things. Yes. Yes. You can actually see improvements. I have a theory. It's a working theory, and I'm not really going to go into it here, that the rejection-based identity is the cause of personality disorders and mood disorders, right? Borderline personality, antisocial personality, narcissistic personality, like those cluster B personality disorders, I believe have their root in rejection-based identity. And I know that because I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and I have, with the help of the Lord, of course, and the help of a lot of work, a lot of coaches, therapists, practitioners have done a lot of this work with people. We've rooted out most of that. I used to be 9 of 9 symptoms. Now I'm like 0.5 of 9 symptoms of borderline. So I know it can be healed. They say it can't. I know it can. And so that work is some of the most important work for me. Like I have 2 things I care about in this life. Okay. Come home to God. That's what Seasons and Signs ministry is about. If you're interested in that, check that out. And come home to self, the true self, the self that is authentic, that God created you to be, that is expansive, and living in the fullness of who you are. And that matters to me so deeply because it took me a lot of hard knocks to figure out that I was living in a rejection-based identity. So I deeply, deeply care about this body of work, and I care about the people who are living under this, what is really a curse, quite frankly. It really is a curse because you have cursed yourself to be alone, and that's not how we're called to be. So what is a rejection-based identity? It is when your self-worth, your self-image, the perception of the world, and your behaviors are heavily influenced or shaped by the fear and or the history of being outcasted, set aside, or not chosen. And so the the rejection-based identity very often is in conjunction with what I call the orphan and the widow spirit. When you are orphaned as a child, your caregivers did not take care of you. They did not meet your needs. They shushed you, silenced you, like didn't prioritize your well-being over their own. You will have an orphan wound or orphan spirit, as it were. The widow spirit is when you were left by your father figure, the widow spirit. And many people, my own self included, have rejection-based identities because their fathers left them, neglected them, abandoned them, mistreated them, sexualized them. And so the orphan and the widow spirit, another story for another day, the rejection-based identity, they kind of go hand in hand. And so there are, I think, a lot of things that can cause a rejection-based identity, but the more you are rejected, especially if you're rejected kind of out of the womb, the more likely you are to have rejection-based identity. Everybody in this life goes to rejection. As we will see in later slides, people who are rejection sensitive kind of feel that more deeply. People who are called and chosen to high level will have rejection on every side. Like, look at Christ. He knew who he was so much. He was not bothered by the people who were rejected. right? Christ did not have a rejection-based identity. Why? Not because he wasn't rejected, not because he couldn't have had it, but because he was so himself. He knew who he was. He knew how he was created. He knew what his mission was. He knew who he knew the truth because he is the way, the truth, and the life. He don't have this. People who have high calls often have rejection-based identity first. So, some of the beliefs that come out of the rejection-based identity. There's something wrong with me, right? If everybody in the world is rejecting you, nobody's accepting you, you're going to think that you're the problem a lot of the times. Even if it's subconscious. Actually, especially it's subconscious messaging, right? I'm not good enough. I can't make people stay. I have no value. Nobody wants me. I'm not valuable. And I'm not chosen and I'm not loved, right? It's an epidemic that we have here because we have a lot of immorality in this time and space. We have a lot of parents that are having children and all they wanted to have was sex. We have a whole epidemic of people who don't know God. And so, yeah, of course you're going to feel rejected. If your parents have rejected you, if society has rejected you, and if you don't know the Lord and you're rejected, then Satan is waiting with open arms to catch you. The world is waiting with open arms to seduce you and pervert you. Like it's just that simple. So, not that rejection-based identity is a simple thing. It's not. It's not. Sort of supplanting the rejection, rooting that out, and putting in the acceptance is a process. I know that. I've lived through the process. And the old identity has to really break off. And that is a process. There's a reason why I call my process rejected, rooted, redeemed. It's a journey. It took me 11 years to do. And that was actively letting the Lord guide it. And it almost killed me like 12 times. Like, let me tell you, getting rejection-based identity out of your core identity is a spiritual warfare. And most people really are called to do it. So, like, let me help, you know. When we are looking at rejection-based identity, there is a sort of a theory in psychology. It's not exactly what I'm hypothesizing here. Okay. It's called rejection identification model, and it kind of explains a little bit how people will deal with a social stigma and discrimination. It's looking a little bit more at marginalized groups. It's looking a little bit more at people who are rejected based on a premise of societal stigma, if that makes sense. And so what RIM, rejection identification model, RIM, kind of posits, is that when people perceive rejection due to a group identity, they will increase their identification with that group to buffer against prejudice and maintain well-being. This is why we see things like gang violence, right? A whole bunch of people are in a rejection-based identity. They will naturally flock together. And then they become this group that doesn't fit into the model of society, but at least they're okay because they group up with other people, right? And I will say that tends to be the truth of the thing. That I really believe that rejection identification model is true because rejected birds of a feather will still try to flock together with rejected people. I talk about the speckled sheep, right? If you know anything about Genesis 31, it talks about how, specifically Jacob was an animal husbandman, a breeder of the speckled sheep, the sheep nobody wanted. And he got rich off of that. In my sort of the ministry, the CEO that I'm a CEO of, I tend to attract a lot of people who have rejection-based identity. Why? I had it. I can help people through it. right? And so it is true. And I would say psychology here is looking at the group identity, the social stigmas. What I am positing on this lecture, in my journals, in my articles, in my book, is that the individual can have the rejection-based identity. So in this kind of a theory, two sides of the same coin. I'm just looking at the individual, and psychology tends to be with RIM looking at the kind of group stigma, right? And I do want to point out where rejection-based identity falls in the bigger body of literature, because it's not that people haven't tried to talk about it. It's just that it goes deeper and more personal than I think most people realize. Like I said, to the best of my knowledge, nobody else is talking about what I'm talking about here, not to this degree, right? And certainly nobody has the solution for it. So I'm a practitioner as much as I am an academic. Make no mistake about that. And I have some body of qualitative research that I want to make quantitative, actually, but I am, just by the nature of the work I do as a self and story analyst and as an identity and leadership coach, I hear a lot of people's stories. And so I have a lot of qualitative research that I've just amassed over the years because I do this work with people so often, right? So if you're interested in this, stay tuned. But if you need help healing from this, I'm not just presenting you a theory. I also have a practical framework to help you move through it. So I kind of touched on this, but I want to get back to mind, body, or soul. Scientists, psychologists, practitioners, academics, and sociologists have tried to define how and where rejection fits in, right? And I want to talk about all of it because I don't think it is in academic integrity to say, oh, I have this theory without exploring the other theories. Actually, that's what a dissertation is. You literally can't, right? Chapter 2 of a dissertation is, hey, here's all the other bodies of literature, and here's why they're not getting it right, and here's why I have a really good point I want to add to the body of literature, right? That's what dissertation research is. So it would be academically disingenuous for me not to look at what's coming up. And so some people say it's a mindset. And to some degree, rejection is a mindset, quite frankly. You can filter your entire worldview through the rejection lens. You can. I did. I have. Others say it's an emotional response. And you can feel emotional and have an emotional response to rejection. That's true too. And others say it's a soul wound, and that's also true, right? All three of these things are true. They're just not the full picture. And so in my own body of research, I have found that it is possible to have one or two or three. But if you have all three, you see rejection everywhere you go, you feel rejection everywhere you go, and you are rejected everywhere you go, you will say, I am a reject. See that? Rejection-based identity is I am a reject. That's what it is. And so if it's your identity, I am a reject, you will act out of rejection all the time. You will say, I don't fit in anywhere. And, it is probably true to some degree that you might be a reject, by the way. Your girl is a reject, okay? I am a reject to society. Healing the rejection-based identity is saying, okay, great, awesome. If I don't fit in, I was meant to stand out. And the Lord created me as he wanted me, and he loves me anyway, and I'm accepted. I accept myself. The Lord accepts me as I am. And that's just great. So it's not to say that you're not a reject. Maybe you are. I am a reject, okay? I am rejected all the time. I have been rejected at every stage of my life. I have been rejected. At many stages of my life, even when I'm accepted, I'm not understood. There's a lot going on here, right? And that's okay. That's how we heal it, the self-acceptance. It's okay. Even if it's true, even if rejection-based identity is true in your life, it's not bad. It's not a shameful thing. Doesn't make you wrong. Doesn't make you unlovable. That's how we heal it, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself. So I have found two. The earlier in your life you have an experienced rejection, the more you are apt to internalize it and say, I'm a reject, right? Like for me, whether this is true or not for anybody else, this is how I saw it. I wasn't really wanted as a start. My conception story was not my mom and my dad flipped a coin to see if I was going to exist. I didn't feel very wanted from before I was even conceived. Then I was conceived, and my mom was very scared, afraid of her own ability to bring a child into this world. And so there was a lot of fear in my 9 months of development. This is before I'm even in the world, by the way. This is why it's a soul issue. Then I was born, and my mom was very happy. She wanted me. She did. My mother loves me. I have had a hard time my whole life feeling that love. Deep rejection will do that to you because it is an emotional response also. Um, when I was young, I was like 2, I had grandparents trying to break my will. I wasn't good as I was. They wanted me to be something else. I was 2 years old. Okay. And these are stories that I've now know about as I've done my own healing work. The 0 to 7 time frame in a life is very important. Done my own healing work, I've learned, oh, I was getting rejected before I even knew how to speak. All right, we already have 3 pretty serious things. I was 3 years old and my dad left. Divorce was my mom and my dad's decision. Me and my brother and my sister were born. My dad left. We went to New Jersey. He went to North Carolina. He remarried. Like he left the family. I was 3 years old, and I've since learned that I was asking, like, where's daddy? Why isn't daddy coming? Why can't daddy build us a house? Right? So your children do internalize things. The earlier you are rejected, the more likely you are to think you are a reject, especially if you have high sensitivity to rejection, as someone like I always have. Neurodivergent is someone like I, which we'll talk about. And that was, I was only 3 years old. I've already got these really deep things. My mother, though, of course, always standing in the gap, loving greatly, but this all is very loud. And so all of those experiences happened before I was even introduced to the world. That was, which is his own thing. But when I was 5, right, my grandmother would lock me in the kitchen because I wasn't listening well, or I was too curious, or I was being too flippant, or I was being too this, that, and the other thing, right? So, and pretty much everybody in my life was giving me the messaging that there's something wrong with you that needs to be fixed. I was like 5, getting locked in the kitchen. Literally locked into the kitchen, by the way. And that was before I had any friends or any societal conditioning or anybody anywhere, right? And so these experiences of perceived rejection, right? And when you get older and you reparent yourself and you heal and you grow, you kind of look at it more objectively. What kind of a grandmother locks a child in a kitchen? Right. What kind of a father leaves his 3 and 2 and 1 year old, 3 and 2 and 8-month-old? Right. And by the way, I love my father. Okay. He did the best he could with what he had. I'm not judging him. Everybody's a human on the journey. It's their first time doing it. My parents were young. My dad was 25. My mom was 25. Right. So I'm not judging anybody. And I love my father. We have a great relationship now. Just on the other day, and he did the best he could. He tried to be involved in our childhood from 500 miles away before there was really cell phones. Like, it's not like I'm not mad at him, but tiny Michelina felt the rejection of the choices that the caregivers made. And so the false identity was getting implanted in me in my developmental years of 0 to 7. The longer you and the earlier you are rejected or perceived rejected, and in my case, I was everywhere I looked, I was not the thing. It will color your identity, which will color your personality, your character, your relationships, and your self-image. I say this all the time. I don't know where I would be without my mother because she was at least the one stable thing. I was always accepted by my mother, even when I was outlandish, even when I was out of pocket, even when I wasn't doing the right thing, even when she didn't understand me, even when she wished I wouldn't do a thing. There was never a time that I wasn't accepted by her. So I am more blessed than many because I only have the widow spirit. I don't have the orphan spirit. So it is a mind, body, and soul issue for certain. But when it goes into your spirit, it goes into yourself, right? We are a spirit, we have a soul, we live in a body. And it is healable. I promise you it is. It does take work. It does take rooting out. It does take an active self and story work. It really, really does. And therapy is part of that. I've had some really beautiful, great therapeutic experience. I've had some terrible ones too. I've been rejected by therapists. Okay. I had a therapist reject me when my life was in shambles. Okay. Don't think I haven't. So, if you're here still and you're listening and you're interested, we haven't even gotten to some of the good parts yet. I get it. I promise you, I get this. I've lived this out. Okay. There is hope. I promise there is. So let's start looking at some of the specifics that people cover because they have a lot of merit. Okay. The rejection mindset, when you kind of look through it, the person you're going to see talk about a lot is Mark to Jesus, right? And he is a sort of a pastor, a teacher, and he claims, specifically him, but many others, that rejection's a mindset. And that living from that mindset does infect your every thought and perception and action. And I have to agree. Like, I think that is very true. When you have a mindset that is focused on how you're not enough and anything you do is not good and you need to perform to be loved, you will stay in a spiral and a loop where you have dangerous patterns and broken relationships. That will happen. That does happen. Now, I've talked about this before, and you guys, maybe if you've seen my guidebooks on Amazon, I have a kind of a working growth model that we grow in 8 ways. Physical, mental, that's mindset work, emotional, intellectual, also mindset, spiritual, social, financial, and sexual. Right? I've got those growth models. And if you want to know more about them, I have that as a lecture series as well. I do have it in my guidebooks available on Amazon, so you can check into that body of work. But mindset is only intellectual and mindset work, right? And so you do need to shift a rejection mindset, certainly, but it's more than a mindset. It's more than a mindset. It comes out in a mindset when you have it in your identity. But it's not just a mindset. But when you have the mindset of nothing I do is good enough, why am I going to try? It's not going to matter. You will have a rejection mindset. I do think it is possible for people to have a really strong identity and just a rejection mindset. Because I've seen that. I'm not going to mention the person, but I've seen it where they have a very strong identity, very strong integrity, very strong character. But when they were going out and trying to do their purpose, their calling, which was a little unconventional, they were getting a lot of rejection. And so they were starting to get defeated. They were starting to get a little bit discouraged, which if you haven't, Atlas of the Heart, Brené Brown, very good way to name your emotions, right? And discouragement comes with rejection mindset a lot of the time. And this person got very good guidance, which is that if man's rejection is God's protection, if you're getting rejected in these ways, you don't need that avenue. And sure enough, that person was right. The person who was getting that rejection mindset shifted the mindset. They are very successful today. Successful in all the ways, not just financially and in their purpose, which they are. And then on the world stage, touring with one of the world's most famous country musicians, quite frankly. But as a person, as a human. So rejection mindset can just be a mindset, and it can be shifted. And then that's that. So it is possible to just have a mindset of rejection and not a soul set, heart set, or spirit set of rejection. That is possible. So this work is good. If you know this person, I think he's got like 135,000 followers on YouTube. He actually lives in North Carolina. He lives in my state. So doing great work. But on the rejection, it's more than a mindset for some people. It's a whole identity. 1. 2, what's coming up now, people are talking about, and I'm so happy about it, is what's called rejection-sensitive dysphoria. Dysmorphia also, because it is, but dysphoria disorder, RSD, and it's a highly sensitive person kind of a thing. If you are a highly sensitive person, it means you feel things very deeply. Some people just feel things more deeply than others. We're starting to get that, right? Highly sensitive person, if you want to Google that, there's like a whole checklist. You might be one. And if you were raised by a not sensitive person and you are a highly sensitive person, it can be very incongruous. Even I'm what now, 37 years old. I am one of the most sensitive people in my immediate family. And sometimes my family forgets just how sensitive I am to things. And so the other day, someone I love and respect deeply, they did something that was really upsetting to me and kind of humiliating, actually. And I just completely broke down in front of them, and they were just shocked. They were like, what? What? Right? And they know me well. So we can be very highly sensitive. People can be. And when you are highly sensitive, another topic for another day, right? You will really have a heightened response to being rejected. And therefore, RSD is this extreme, overwhelming emotional response to perceived or real rejection, criticism, or failure. Now, again, the last slide about rejection mindset, I'm crediting Mark to Jesus on because he has a lot of body of work on that, which I agree with and think there's more to the story. And rejection sensitive dysphoria is a psychological work, a body. These are not my works. Okay. That's why I want you to know, like, the first part of what it is, rejection-based identity, is me. But the other things are other practitioners and other academics who have these theories that I just want you to be aware of. Because rejection can be in your mind, it can be in your heart, it can be in your soul. But when it's in your spirit, it will color everything, and it is a rejection-based identity. And that claim, as far as I'm aware, is my own, and nobody else is making it right now. And I will die on the hill, and I will publish a body of literature on it. Don't worry. So RSD, though, is an emotional state. It's not necessarily right now any kind of formal standalone medical diagnosis. What ends up happening when you're looking at RSD is it kind of comes as a package deal with some of the other neurodivergent tendencies. And neurodivergence is just your brain operates differently than a neurotypical brain, right? My extreme analytical ability, my pattern recognition, my ability to conceptualize processes, those are all very neurodivergent. I am non-diagnosed autistic. I am diagnosed borderline personality disorder. They are two different things. I had them both. And both of them can be regulated. And a lot of it is a superpower, quite frankly. And so some of you might be highly sensitive, maybe have mood disorders yourself, borderline, perhaps. But some of you might be also deeply and intensely thinking, which also I understand. Right? So I promise you, I have run the gamut of many things. And it is all just part of me. And so it's just all good, you know? It's there's nothing wrong with it. It just is. It just is what it is. And so people will have you think it's wrong, in which case you will get rejection sensitive dysphoria, right? When you feel like the way you're presenting a thing is the wrong thing and people don't want it, you will have an overwhelming emotional response to perceived or real rejection, right? Like, and I will say that I have had clients with RSD, and because I rejected people come to me. Hello, welcome. And so I've seen these things, and it is a regulating process and a depersonalizing process, and getting a better objective understanding of things. And so this can also quell with time. It can be less painful. And you can, one of the one-on-one frameworks programs that I offer is safe to be seen and heard. People who have a hard time being seen and heard have a high rejection sensitive dysphoria. That's one of the ways it shows up. So I have a lot of one-on-one programs because I deal with a lot of different authentic identity issue, right? And so rejection sensitive dysphoria is something that people are talking about. And again, it is good. It's kind of when you have a rejection mindset plus a rejection sensitivity in your heart and your emotional body. Therefore, you are kind of afraid to put yourself out there a lot of the times. Once we start getting into the rejection wound, this is a core wound. This is the closest to the rejection-based identity. And you can have a fair amount of soul wounds: rejection wound, abandonment wound, trust wound, father wound, mother wound, right? You can have multiple wounds. They're in your soul space. The rejection wound is a deep, 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 deep emotional pain that results from childhood or past relationships where one feels unwanted, cast aside, or unaccepted, right? And so, before I even had a chance to develop a mindset or even like really develop a way to react to things, I was already being prepped for a rejection wound because I have 5 deeply painful rejection experiences that were not even in my cognitive awareness because you have no cognition. You have no cognition, you know, when you are a fetus. But you do have the ability to absorb things from the womb. And energetic absorption's a thing. And if you know any work on like energetic frequency, we are an energetic body, right? We are a spirit. That's an energetic body. Everything has energy. Everything has frequency. Everything is moving because everything's alive. If it's not moving, it's dead. Right? So, because movement is part of life. And so, that deep emotional pain kind of can get absorbed by like osmosis, like energetic exchange, which is a really interesting kind of a theory. You'd have to kind of understand quantum physics and quantum mechanics to better understand those kind of things, which again, beyond the scope of my ability, even especially in this lecture. So the rejection wound is the closest, I think, and it is a core soul wound. And I think it is that what I kind of was working with for the first couple of years of my practice was the like core beliefs. I am unworthy, is a big one. And I don't matter, right? And the difference is a rejection-based identity has one very firm belief. I am a reject. And out of I am a reject comes I'm unworthy, I don't fit in, I don't belong, nobody loves me, I need to work to find my worth. But I am a reject, stamped, is the rejection-based identity. And not necessarily something that you're aware of, but you feel you live that out. And so every rejection then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of I am a reject. So bang, of course I was rejected. And it's a process that's happening in your subconscious because we operate out of 95% of our subconscious. Okay. From 0 to 7 years old, all people operate out of is their subconscious. They are only in theta state, right? And this is easy to research. You can just, this is well-known research. You can just check it out. But 0 to 7 is theta state, theta brainwave, which means that the children are just absorbing. They're not filtering. It bypasses the conscious mind because they don't have one. They have no cognition yet. And then from 7 to 14, they're developing their alpha, beta, gamma, and delta brain states, brain waves, and they're developing a cognitive mind, the ability to reason and logic and such. But still in all, at best, we operate out of 5% of our conscious mind, and 95% is our subconscious body, right? Think of an iceberg. You see 10% of it, 90% goes on underneath. And the subconscious body is a myriad of things. The spirit, the soul, the fascia, the nervous system, your vagus, your psoas. Like there's a lot. Somatic healing is important. Fascial release is important. There's a lot of body things that need to get done to release wounds that we have. And so it is a process. I can't lie to you. And so what it kind of looks like is like the rejection-based identity is bang, I'm a reject. The rejection wound is I'm not worthy, I don't matter. The rejection sensitivity is like, ow, this hurts so much, I'm not able to deal with it. And the rejection mindset is, why should I even try? I'm not gonna make a difference, right? That's kind of how it blooms out. And so what that looks like in you, right? How does that play out? If you have any of this, there are going to be some things that you can see pretty clearly. These are the symptoms. A lot of people are trying to solve these as the root. They're not even close. Not even close. These are the symptoms. And again, there's symptoms that aren't just for rejection-based identity or rejection wound or RSD or rejection mindset. They're also symptoms for trauma, CPTSD, right? So avoidant or not avoidant attachment issues. So these are not only indicators of rejection-based identity. That's why they're symptoms. You have to find the root if you're experiencing it. So if you're in hypervigilance, which we'll talk about, avoidant behaviors, people-pleasing, perfectionism, or self-rejection, it may be a rejection-based identity. It may also be some kind of complex PTSD. It may also be, X, Y, or Z thing. So these are symptoms for a reason. If you're experiencing any of them, it's like a check engine light, right? Your check engine light comes on. You're like, what's wrong with the engine? That's what this is. So hypervigilance is this over analyzing. Like you are checking everything. You're in constant analysis, right? My deep thinkers are like can get themselves into analysis paralysis. They get stuck in hypervigilance. And it's like you're running on the treadmill of your own mind, quite frankly. And it is painful and dangerous for your own growth or lack thereof. Hypervigilance is when you're overanalyzing interactions and you take comments that may not even be meant for anything and you think they're criticizing and rejecting, right? I have seen this happen where I will put something out, content for the multitude, right? Comments for the brethren. Um, Content for the brethren. And I will have someone who's got high levels of rejection or they're triggered in some way, and they will message me privately and they're like, was that about me? No. What do you mean? No. No, no. Not usually, no. So people will like kind of take the thing and make it about themselves. And they're not trying to do that in they're not trying to do that in a bad way. They just feel threatened. Avoidance behaviors are so prevalent now. I will say men tend to have more avoidant behaviors. Women tend to have more anxious behaviors from the attachment style. If you know anything about attachment styles, if you don't, that's also, it's not my body of work. It's on my YouTube, attachment styles, because this is how people connect or don't connect. I think it's great research. I think it's great literature. And by literature, I mean academic literature, not like fiction and lit. Two different things. I obviously have experience with both. But avoidant behaviors are the withdrawing, the runner, they're isolating, they don't want to put themselves out there. I also have a really great lecture on confidence, and it's this kind of like sort of hesitation habit loop. If you're in avoidance, you might want to watch that, the confidence one, because you won't put yourself out there. And sometimes that can really point to rejection-based identity. So if you have any of these, if you have all of these, you need something and stat, therapy, coaching, self-awareness, self-analysis, something to figure out what's going on in me. Okay. And that's not bad. I had all of these things. I people pleased to the point that I like lost my whole life. Told someone yes, I should have told them no, right? Because they asked me for it and I wanted to please them and I didn't want to upset them. And I'd given them too much kind of power over my life. And so people pleasing and perfectionism is working to be accepted so that people don't reject you. And we see that as kind of an epidemic now. And there's a lot of literature on this, so I'm not going to take too much time on it. And then self-rejection is you are in self-condemnation, you reject yourself before anyone can reject you, right? I see this a lot where people devalue themselves as a defense mechanism, right? We have an epidemic of this sexually, where people are devaluing their worth sexually. They just going out there having sex with anybody. Your body is sacred. Your sex is sacred. People don't look at it that way. I didn't look at it that way. It was taken from me early, and I didn't think it was sacred. I thought it was worthless. I didn't think it mattered at all. I also thought I was worthless. I also had an identity of rejection. So of course, right? These things just kind of happen. In our development process, they can happen. And so there is kind of surface level indicators that you should look out for in yourself, right? And you can check more into these. I encourage you to do so. So rejection in any form for anybody is painful. Some people feel it more than others, but it hurts us all. Rejection is a hard thing. And sometimes in this life, the answer is no, right? It just is because you're putting up a boundary, because it's not the right thing at the right time. Like your no is important. So even though it might hurt someone, sometimes the hurt will heal too. Okay, so rejection is one, important, two, a necessary kind of an evil, and three, a lot of the times it's not meant to be anything that hurts you, right? You get rejected from college. It just means you're not supposed to be there. Now, some people have a hard time they won't take no for an answer. We see that, okay, and that's problematic. And we also see people who can't say no, also problematic. We have to be balanced in it. That's a whole whole nother topic. But rejection, the pain of rejection, the research now shows, will light up the same brain regions as physical injury. That is why when someone experiences a heartbreak, that's like a deep sense of rejection, it is like a physical injury. And people do die from heartbreak. Why? Your brain cannot interpret the difference. Your brain does not know the difference between I'm in physical pain and I'm in deep emotional pain from rejection. Right? So that is a real thing. Rejection will confuse, cause self-doubt, and fear will show up in place of good relationship connection, right? When you're in deep rejection, if you have a rejection-based identity, you will not be able to show up fully. You will show up fragmented. You will show up as less than. You are living out of a satanic stronghold. You are living out of a lie. Your whole identity is a lie. So you cannot possibly show up in truth. You show up in half-life. That's a real thing. It absolutely 1000% keeps you from getting close to your own self, to the Father, and to other people. How are you supposed to love God and love others if you hate yourself? How are you supposed to love God and love others if you are rejecting your own self? Okay, this is one of Satan's favorite things because it will keep him as the person in charge of your life. The rejection-based identity is a real epidemic, and Satan loves it. And the Father is working always to get the brethren out of it because he loves you and he accepts you. Don't mean he likes your behaviors. He can love you and not love your behaviors, but he loves you. That distinction's really hard for people to make, right? Like, oh, I love my kid, but man, I don't like what they're doing right now. Parents might be able to get it a little better. And rejection does have you take everything personally. Every little tiny comment, every little tiny criticism, every little tiny anything, people get very upset by. And people now, you can see the rejection-based identity so real that like people who didn't, the president they voted for did not win the election. They are still upset about it. They still are taking it personally. Like the sitting president is a personal rejection to them. And you can just see it. And this is the United States, right? You can just see it. So it's real. It really does impact everyday life. It really is a societal epidemic. And nobody's really talking about the rejection-based identity. So, how do you heal from the rejection-based identity? And we are close to done, guys. So bear with, and I appreciate you hanging out, right? And I am not going to gatekeep anything from any of you ever, okay? I'm not going to do it. This is not clickbait. I will stay on as long as I need to prove a point, and I'm not trying to say you need to work with me to heal. You don't. It will be faster. I am like one of the best practitioners of this that I know. My clients say the same thing, but I don't care what you do. Just get aware and heal. I want the best for you, and if I'm not the one, that's okay, right? So I'm never going to gatekeep. So here's the ways to do it. The first thing that has to happen, you have to learn the truth of who you are. That is hard for most people. That alone, I am always telling people about who they are. I'm like, that's not authentic to you. I know that's not authentic to you. Now, again, I've worked with thousands of people, so like it's easy for me to see. You have to alchemize, change, transform the rejection-based identity into an acceptance-based one. This is easiest when you know God or you're willing to know God. There's a reason why every single healing program says you have to acknowledge a power greater than yourself. Every single one. Now, I've done a lot of research, I've done a lot of studying. The only God that makes sense is the Christian God. The only God that is in the fabric of reality, fabric of DNA, fabric of everything is the Christian God. There's a reason why I'm a Christian, and it's not because I had to be. It's because it's the only thing that makes sense when you understand things to the depth and the truth that I understand things. Now, if you want to understand things like that, like I do, go to my minister channel, okay? Because I'll teach the Bible in like 5 different ways, chapter by chapter, line by line, topically, emotionally, you name it. I will teach the Bible in that way. So if you want to better understand that kind of stuff, head elsewhere, right? Because I've got that too. But here we're talking about more self work, self and story work. Know who you are in God, though, is important. Now, can you do authentic identity work to some degree without that? Yes. I have done that. My first 2 years of coaching, I did that where I wasn't talking to the Christians. I was just, you can, to some degree, do authentic identity analysis without talking about the Father. I have just found the work is faster, it's clearer, it's truer when you include him. That's why I do it that way now. But you can do it without. I have. Know who you were created to be by God. Again, like I said, it's faster when you know you're created on purpose for a purpose, when you know you're created for a reason, for a season. It is faster and easier because that is true. People will try to deny it, do not care. They are wrong. Knowing your strengths, weaknesses, values, and core self is one of the easiest places to start. And still, that's hard for people because there's a lot of false identity. If your identity is really, really embedded in you and it's a very false one, you will think that the truth is the lie is a truth. So a lot of the times when I'm talking to someone, well, I'll take my own self an example, actually. I thought for real, I was just a sarcastic bitch. I did. And I found out that was a lie. I actually don't like sarcasm at all. It was a performance. It was a mechanism because I didn't want people to really know the truth of what I was saying. Sarcasm is a lie. It's a low form of wit, but it's a lie. I'm saying what I don't mean. That's a lie. That's what lies are, right? Like, it's a lie. So one of the first things I did when I started to really come in deeper into this work was my yes was yes, my no was no. That is biblical. Matthew tells us that, but Jesus tells us that. But also it's just good psychological advice. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Say what you mean what you say, do what you say. That is a great place to start. But people, I really thought I was sarcastic, and I wasn't. And I was 28 years old when I figured that out about myself. I'm not sarcastic at all. In fact, I'm like very not sarcastic, actually. So learn the truth of who you are and know your strengths, weaknesses, values, and core self are very deeply authentic identity work and much harder. They're deceptively simple. It looks easy, but to actually try to do it on your own is very difficult because you don't see yourself clearly. The pickle in the jar cannot read its own label is a real thing. So that can be really tough, but it's necessary. Learn what you were sent and created to do. That's not coming at the beginning of this work. That will not come until probably after the fact. When you find the truth of kind of what's true to you, that comes very naturally out, right? I was like, for a lot of my life, I was like, oh, I'm a teacher. That's part of who I was, not all of it. I'm actually a really great analyst. I'm a really good researcher. I'm a really great coach. I'm a really good minister. I'm a really good CEO. Like, I'm a lot of other things too. And most people are like that. You're more than one thing. You're so much more than one thing. And we'll like pigeonhole ourselves into like this, kind of a lie. And so this is a process. This is a process. Really, this process is best cultivated from infancy, right? If I would love to just teach every parent about authentic identity because it helps them with their children. I've really seen now the mothers that I work with, it almost instantly changes the way they deal with their children. And it's really beautiful to behold. This is how we heal so that the children don't have to heal from the generational issues. And so this work should be from infancy. The acceptance-based identity is what we should give to all of our children. Now, I am not a parent, so I cannot say what you can and cannot, should or should not do, okay? I am just saying that the parents that cultivate the acceptance of their children will give their children less to heal from and will make them stronger and more resilient. And I say that as a coach. I say that as a former teacher, a former, I'm still a teacher in some rights, but a former classroom teacher. Um, as somebody who has nieces and nephews, it's just better when you just let them be who they are while shaping them to be decent little humans, right? Um, and again, that's a topic for another day. But you can heal from false identity. I promise you can. Um, I can do it. You can do it. We can do it. It can be done. It is better when we don't have to heal from it. But a lot in my generation, like 25 to 35, well, generations, I guess it depends on how you define them, but really 25 to 45, I guess I could say my generation is. I don't really know. Maybe that's not quite my generation. Um, the fastest healers from it because they've, you know, dealt with it long, but not terribly long. Harder when you're like 45 to 65, but still doable. 65 to 85 is the hardest because you've had a lot of time in the false and not as much time in the true, right? So there's that, but it can be done. It should be done. It needs to be done. And I'm sorry that you need to do it in the first place. I'm sorry that you had a rejection-based identity or rejection wounds, or you didn't know how to deal with the hard things, the rejections you faced. I'm sorry if you have the orphan or the widow spirit. I'm sorry if you have a father or mother wound. And I know most people do, so this is good for everybody. Everybody should watch this. They won't, but I wish they would. So, if you want to schedule an authentic identity analysis, right, that's a connection call that I do for free. It is a brave thing to reach out and say, hey, there's something that I think needs to be looked at here. There is something that I don't like and I want to check it out, right? Um, that's a brave thing and it's a hard thing. It's hard to come and look at ourselves fully and truly. When I was the way this I came into this, that there was something that was not quite functioning correctly with me was when I made the mistake as a teacher of getting too close to my student and sending him pictures I shouldn't have sent him. And when I was in a jail cell, I was like, oh, something's amiss here. I am getting painted as a villain and I have never been villainous. What is going on? My own self-concept and the worldly concept of me because of this mistake that I made was very incongruous, deeply incongruous. And so it dove me deep into who am I really? Am I the villain that I'm being painted as? No, no, I never was, and I never will be. Now, if people want to villainize me, they can go right ahead. But now, 8 years later, I think it's important for people to know the difference between a pattern of behavior and a mistake. And I can very happily say that was a mistake. And it's because I never made it before and I never made it since. And so, but it did. I was sitting in a jail cell looking at my charges like, what is going on here? How am I here? How did this happen to me? And I thought to myself, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And so I got into the deep, deep, deep self and story work, and I got into deep authentic identity. And like, who am I really? And am I this villain? And am I a good person? And do I care about people? And the truth of me is I've always wanted to help people. And I always will want to help people. It doesn't mean that I won't make mistakes. You won't make mistakes, right? The core of who you are, probably one of the first things that people get to really understanding about themselves is, do I want to help people or don't I? That's like one of the things all the time that comes up on the authentic identity analyst calls, self and story analyst calls is, I was like, who are you? And it's like, they're like, somebody who wants to help people. That's like one thing that people know, kind of latch onto. They want to help people. And that was true for me too. One of the first things I knew about myself was like, I never want to harm anyone and I never want to harm anything. And I used to say that to my kids on the first day of school. I'm like, guys, I never want to embarrass you. I never want to upset you. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to disrespect you. But if I do, let me know because it's never my intention. I only want to help. Now, again, doesn't mean I didn't do a harmful thing. And I did have students that took me up on that. And they're like, hey, Miss Eichel, that really hurt my feelings in class. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that. can I make it up to you? Can I make it better? Because I did care about my students as humans, not just as my students. And that is a big thing we're missing in this day and age. People are humans first. We look at them in their roles. Oh, well, that's my sister, that's my brother, that's my son, that's my daughter, it's my mom. No, no, they're not. Okay, they're a human being, probably functioning as a human doing. The least important thing about them is that they're your mom or your dad, your brother, your sister, your son, or your daughter. Which is, I know, that's another concept, which we're not going to get into. Anyway, so I say that because I want you to know if you're looking for a perfect person, you're not going to find her here. Okay. If you're looking for someone that hasn't made any mistakes, you're not going to find her here. Okay. Because I have plenty. If you're looking at someone that hasn't dealt with the rejection-based identity I just talked to you about, you don't want me because I have. And part of true acceptance of self and the self-acceptance identity is that, like, I know I'm not perfect. I know I'm going to mess up. I know I'm going to do things that upset people. And I don't mean to, but I will. And that's going to have to be okay because it's my first time on this earth too, right? And so if you want someone who is not real, you don't want me because I'm all about authentic identity, but I'm also about like living out the truth. So if you want to know more about the work, the transformations, the programs, any of those things, selfandstoryanalyst.com is my website. If you want to email me directly, dr.michelina@gmail.com. That's me. And if you've watched all of this and you're on my YouTubes and you are in my network and you're ready to take the next step, guys, please do reach out. Okay, that is the first step. It's a sliding scale. Authentic identity work is super interesting because a lot of times people need a lot of different things. And I've got a lot of programs that I offer for a lot of different prices. If you are a Christian and you want to get closer to God and get closer to self, the best way to do that is to sign up for the community, Seasons and Signs Ministry. Okay. That is the best thing to do because that's where the fastest, best, most important healing work can be done. You can get it all there. And discounts on one-on-one work if you do want to do one-on-one work, because I offer discounts to people in the community because it's easier. You're in a community space, you're getting all the things. It's an accelerated growth process, and you can work with me one-on-one, but then I still have access to you when the container is done. And I like that best. So my own personal preference is always the community work. But all that to say, I hope you found this interesting. Get ready to hear more about it because this is part of my life's work, right? Authentic identity and rejection-based identity are things I care deeply about. You can do hard things, okay? You do matter. Your existence matters. You are important. You are a miracle. And even if no one has ever wanted you, your father wants you. Okay. And I'm rooting for you. I really, really am. Okay. So I appreciate you. It's an honor to get to talk to you. I appreciate your time. And if you are ready to take any next steps, then by all means, reach out and just tell me what you want me to know. Okay. I also will say on a caveat, with the self and story work, I am also a minister. So it's all covered under the confidentiality of like spiritual practice too. So if you feel like you want to make a confession, you can do that because it's covered. That is a nice thing about being a minister also. I have like over 50 certifications, diplomas, degrees, awards. Yeah, I have a lot. And that's not bragging on myself. That's just the truth of the thing. I have like 7 academic degrees and a whole heck of a lot of other things. So I've got a lot of certifications in a lot of things, and I am ordained as a minister. I'm actually double ordained as a minister. So there is a sort of you have to be able to trust the person that you're going to work with. And it does have to be a fit also, and a lot of the times with an authentic identity analysis, Part of that is me saying like, hey, here's where you are in your journey. Here's a resource I think will be helpful to you. I think it's not the time for us to work together, or I don't think I'm the practitioner for you, or hey, yeah, this is what I think we should do if you want to do it. Some promises I can make to you if you do take an authentic identity analysis call or you schedule one, um, there will be no pressure. You will get value on the call. I think I've done, I don't know, thousands of authentic identity analyses, connection calls, discovery calls. I've called them a lot of things in the last 6 years, as I've been an identity coach. And the point of the call is to give value, not for us to work together. From my point of view, it's to give value. It's to help you understand yourself better. And I have had plenty of people who just did the connection call, just did the authentic identity analysis, and never became a client. And that was fine because really, like, I have taken this journey. It's very easy for me to identify where you might be in it. I've used a lot of resources. So just as some caveats, right? It's a no risk call, quite frankly. The big risk is you putting yourself out there, which is a risk, by the way. I know it is. But if you are ready to take that risk, it is a very safe place to do it. Okay. So I appreciate you. I am rooting for you. Check out some of the other things. I have a minister YouTube. I have Minister Michelina YouTube. I have a Dr. Michelina YouTube, obviously. I've got so much content. Um, if I can help you, take any of it. And if you want to schedule a call, then find me in one of those places and I will talk to you when I talk to you.